So this is kind of an interesting experience for me. I watch all the Monitorama talks, but Portland's far from Baltimore, and I just never really wanted to come. Sorry. I know Jason's somewhere around here, and the funny story is that I was at OzCon last year, and Jason's like, "Bryan, you're gonna speak at my conference, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And I kind of forgot. But I'm here now, and so let's do this. So I'm going to talk about monitoring in the enterprise, but I want to be inclusive. Not all of you work at an enterprise, so I want to have a small talk for those of you who do not work in the enterprise. So monitoring things at your day job. Step one, pick a tool. Yeah. Step two, pick another tool. Or we can pick another tool. Another tool. Oh, wow. Another tool. And then here's my favorite one. That one bash script that does all the things, but no one actually knows how to do what it does. And then after you get past that, the next thing is you're going to monitor things. Things that are not important right now. You're just going to monitor things. And this is what always happens. Step three. Bicker about the choices. And, we pick these things and mistakes were made. And what we always do is we end up going back to step one. And this is how it works in a small company. And actually, I'm not here to pass judgment. This is okay. Small companies are great places for new innovation, things that can't happen in big companies. So I say go out there. I'm talking to you, you, and you. Make all the mistakes, tweet about them, and then do it again. But now here is something that I really want to talk about, monitoring in the enterprise. And at first this was a concise guide, but then I realized nothing in the enterprise is concise. So this is a slightly longer guide. I think we'll have 80 more slides, but it's not really all that bad. I'm Bryan Liles. Until 2 months ago, I was a developer at Capital One. I guess I developed too well, so they developed me into a director. But I fought back, and I directed myself into writing software and managing teams and owning a product. Don't ask me how I do it, but that's what I do. But my disclaimer here is I am not here to officially endorse anything. Anything I say may be wrong. Actually, it's probably right, but if you ask me about it, I will say that it's wrong. I am not here representing my employer. My employer paid for this trip. The ideas that are contained in this talk are my own. They do not represent anything that we are bringing to the market in the past, the future, or whenever. And then I have a whole bunch of other disclaimers here, but those aren't important. So on to the talk. I'm sure you have an enterprise monitoring team. And I can actually, by a show of hands, who here is on an enterprise monitoring team? I know a few people are because I had a meeting about it last week. I'm not kidding. So how do they know what to monitor? Well, of course, they monitor the enterprise, right? That's what it's in the title of the team. I'm going to monitor the enterprise, of course. But, as a development team, and at my place of employment, we have an awful lot of development teams. Do they have access? Do we have access as a development team to their tools? Maybe, maybe not. Or actually we could, but we really can't find them because we have an intranet with 10 bajillion pages on there, a Confluence and a GitHub, and this custom site that someone stood up, and we just can't find them. Does your enterprise team know who to monitor? Or who to notify when something bad breaks? I don't know. Another question. Do they even know what's important? And it's not what they tell you is important, but actually, really, what's important for your product? I work at a bank. And believe it or not, we write software that does more than just move money around. And, it was a culture shock to me as well. But we actually do that. We have a pretty crazy machine learning group here at the company. Another question is, how does your enterprise monitoring team know when changes happen? Software's not static. New development teams are coming, Old development teams are shipping new things. How does your team know? Well, what did they do? Did they send an email? Do they go to a Jira board? Some people still use version 1. Do they go to a version 1 board? Do they just sit and pray and hope that something happens? I don't know. But I do know this. Whatever your enterprise monitoring team is doing right now, it's not good enough. So what do we do as smart people? Smart people. What do we do? And you all already know what the next slide is going to be. Well, you know what? They can't help me. Screw it. I'll do it myself. And thank you for coming to my talk today. This has been nice. I do want to talk about something, just a little sidebar. Can I walk over here? Because as a speaker, you're given a box, and it's kind of confining here, and my ideas are more expressive than this little box. But I broke my clicker, so I don't really think I can walk over there. But I really do, because it's a really nice, it's nice. I actually want to break dance right now, but I'm not going to. But, all right, sidebar over. So now that you're monitoring, what do you monitor? And what you're seeing here is the absolute ultimate ability of mine to add things to slides. So what we have here is we have a service foo, and everyone needs a service foo. It's a triangle. You know why? Because it's pointy. I don't know why. And then you have a service bar, rounded rectangle. And I only put rounded rectangles in there because somehow they're soothing to me. There's no points, but it's still kind of a square. And then everyone else has this, they have a snowflake apps. Everyone has a snowflake app. And of course, Keynote has no snowflakes in their little clip art here. So this is a star, but for this talk, it's a snowflake. So we have these 3 apps, Foobar and Baz. And what should you monitor in those? Well, I don't know. There's certain characteristics of all 3 of these that need to be monitored. So who knows those better than anyone? Your team knows these. And then here's the next problem. Now that we know that we're going to monitor, what should we alert on? Well, the first answer is, well, everything. I don't know. Just if it moves, alert. We get a request, alert. If we don't get a request, alert. Figure that one out. Which gets into the next problem. Who should you alert? I'm starting to realize after I wrote these slides, but after putting them on in front of a group, wow, this really sucks. Who wants to do this? But this is all the questions that we should ask ourselves. And then we have one more new problem here is what tools should I use? Before I talked about I just named Prometheus and Sensu and Zabbix. And if you're in AWS, you can use CloudWatch and whatever. Or you can use Datadog and SignalFX. But realize that you're in an enterprise. Believe it or not, if you're in an enterprise, and this is the greatest part about enterprise, what tools do we run? All of them. Why not? This team is running SignalFX. This team is running Datadog. It costs whatever, because you know what? At the point when you are in a large organization, the cost of an individual service is actually not a problem anymore. So what happens is when money is not your constraint, you just do everything. So I'm saying, as a team, you need to figure out what tools are you going to use. I said I wasn't going to actually talk about any tools before, but it's my show, so I'm going to actually change that. I like Prometheus. Why do I like Prometheus? You know what? I like the guys who created it. And I like how they think. I like that it is abstracted from something that was way bigger. And in my mind, it's just pretty nice. And I actually got to see it in production. I have a friend here in the audience who actually took it from a little thing to like a huge thing. And then he did what any great open source author did and just dropped it on the floor. I'm not going to tell anyone who you are, Ian. And then we have another problem. How do you monitor your monitoring tools? I think there's actually a talk about this later on, about monitoring your monitoring tools. But something I think about, so if we figure this one out, well, how do you monitor that tool? And then how do you monitor that tool? At a certain point, we're going to need to stop, and we're going to need to figure out, how do we know when things are going correct? So here's the reality that I came into is, I worked at a lot of startups. I've had my own company. I've done things, and I've always been, big fish, little pond. I go to a company with 47,000 people, and a 10,000 person tech org, and I realized something very, very quickly. It doesn't matter how smart you are, how good you are competing with everyone else for everyone else's attention. And what you have to really realize quickly is that you are a super small cog in a super big machine. And I'll tell you something else. If you're on NICE or NASDAQ or something else, you know, that CEO doesn't care about what monitoring tool you what you're using. He cares or she cares that, guess what, it's up. And up doesn't mean technically up, it means that it's making money. So let's take a step back. And I will give you another disclaimer. I am not good at searching Google for pictures. When I tweet and I put a little GIF in there, it's only because it's in my Google keyboard on my phone, or they give me the little link. I actually can't go search. I think I was born in the wrong generation or something. I just cannot do this. So let's think about what we have here. What do we want from our monitoring system? Well, we want to know if it works. And what does that mean? Well, that's up to you to decide. You need to figure out what it is that you are serving, and then you can figure out what it is how it works. Because I've seen teams that said, you know what, I'm going to use Nagios to monitor everything. And I'm just looking at them like, and okay. And they're saying, well, we're going to monitor this and we're going to monitor that. And I'm saying, okay. And we're going to monitor this and we're going to monitor that. And I said, okay, so what are you actually doing? Well, we have a static site. Okay. And then here's a more important piece. How do you know if your stack works well for others? We get so engrossed, and this is actually prevalent in larger companies, it's just a people thing, that we get so engrossed in protecting ourselves. Like I deliver widget foo. All I care about is foo kind of works to something. Sometimes I don't think about whether foo works well for others. And that's something that your monitoring system is going to need to expose. Not only does it work well within its scope, but also that it works well for others, because it's useless if it doesn't work well. So I'm going to introduce some slides. And this is interesting. I hesitated putting these slides up here in this room. There's some pretty good monitoring minds in here. I've had some pretty good conversations over the last day or so. But this is not for you. This is for everyone watching this on Vimeo or YouTube later. This is for posterity. I need to define the terms before I use them. So we're going to talk about SLIs, service level indicators. Those are the little points of saying this is one little point. So a good example of an SLI would be the error rates for some web service. And then what we have is our SLO and our service level objectives. These are metrics that we define internally that say this is how we need to operate to be successful. And generally, you take a group of SLIs and you combine them together and you get an SLO. This is how you can actually say that something is working correctly. And then everyone's heard of an SLA, a service level agreement. This is what you tell your users or your losers how well you're going to act. And generally, in a lot of cases with bigger companies, SLAs have dollar amounts with them, so these are pretty important. Another thing I'm going to talk about is white box versus black box monitoring. This is as technical as I'm going to be in this talk. Remember, a black box is you have garbage going in, you have a service, and then you measure the garbage going out. I like to actually equate it to this. There's some stink over here, there's something happening in the middle. How much stink can I get on the other side? And that's what your tool is actually measuring. So a lot of things like your Nagios checks or some other checks, they're just measuring how much of the stink permeates through whatever you've built. And then you have white box monitoring. And white box monitoring is I get inside, I know what's going on with your memory, your CPU, your secret sauce. I can get in there, I can touch your goodies, and we are very intimate. That was not a woo. This talk is PG, thank you very much. So, how can you know if you're meeting your SLA and your SLO? I don't know. Some people, they just say, well, we are. Or they create a PowerPoint. This is not PowerPoint time. What we really need are logs, metrics, and other things. I should have actually put a TM on other things because I am going to trademark this one. So let's talk about logs. So I have some rules for logs. If you create a log, use a structured log. Do not send me, it is literally sending me it's a textual middle finger when someone says, here, look at my Apache log file. No. Even Nginx, if you look at what Nginx is doing in their newer versions, they're actually saying that maybe we should have a better defined structured file. I'm not saying you should use JSON all the time, but I'm saying at least I should be able to go in there and parse it out and not have to know the format of the parsing. Logs are useless if they're not aggregated. And what I mean by this is if a log is sitting on your server, it is the most useless log in the entire world. Send your logs off, because I assume that, it's 2017, servers are here, but they're not going to be here forever. So remember, if your log is important, ship it off to somewhere else. I'm not saying use Elasticsearch or Papertrail or any of those other things or CloudWatch logs. All I'm saying is that your log on your server is useless. Get it somewhere else. And then also remember, your log should tell a story. I see logs all the time where it'll be service started up, service is running, service had an oops, stack trace, service is running, service had out of memory. It's a Java app now, but but they should tell us. Actually, you know what? That's a horrible example, because that is a story. It's a sad story. It's called I'm a Java developer. And I know there's Java developers in this room because I was sitting next to one this morning. But I do love everyone. And I do empathize with you. But back to my story. So another thing to talk about is logs and metrics. Actually, if you can just remember anything from this talk, remember that logs, metrics. Bryan said logs, Bryan said metrics. So metrics are another simple thing. Is one or more numbers that give details about something. What's that something? It doesn't matter. I can't tell you. I'm not running your app. But like I said before, we can do things like we can have a metric for latency. We can have a metric for how long a web request took. We can have a metric for how much memory am I using right now. And the metrics are combined to create a time series. Just need to know that. And then other things, TM. One of the things I want to talk about is tracing. We talk about logs and metrics now, but tracing is hard. And I noticed that more people are talking about this. There's products out there. There's Zipkin. I know it's JVM based, but it's still pretty nice. But what is tracing? Tracing is I have a request, and it goes through one service, and that service calls another service, and that service. How do I know these all go together? Well, you can use tracing. And what's the great thing about tracing is that you can actually track a request through your whole entire microservice stack, because I know everyone here has microservice apps now. But you can also see things like, what is the memory usage? What are the slow points? Where is the hot spots? And we should just know these kinds of things. If you want to know more about this, I'm speaking. Can I talk about other conferences here? I'm going to. That was a rhetorical question. I'm actually giving two iterations of this talk at Velocity. I know Velocity is expensive. Just go to your employer, tell them to buy it. But I'm giving 3 hours on open tracing. And only reason I want to is because I think it is an amazing thing. And I think we've talked about logging, we've talked about metrics. Now it's time to talk about tracing to get that whole stack in order. So that's like next month, and in October, I'm not leaving the country. I might not be able to get back in. So please catch me at one of those two. So another thing I like to talk about and other things is health endpoints. A lot of people do their health endpoints like right now. If you're running in AWS and you have an ELB, and you might have a page that you hit it returns back with a 200 OK. But that isn't okay, because it doesn't tell you anything. It tells us okay. People ask me how I'm doing, and if I'm doing crappy, I still say I'm okay. So we need to actually understand that piece. So I'm proposing more, and some people do this when it comes to health endpoints. Put some stuff in there. I actually got in a little bit of a tiff with a developer one day. He says, "Why would you want to do that?" I said, if someone's relying on my service and our other backing database goes down, not managed by our team, shouldn't we be able to say, "Hey, it was him"? And I know that the whole stop snitching thing came through, but when it comes to your apps, snitch. If you're relying on something that goes down, tell everyone upstream it was him. So just do this. It's actually not very hard. You can write these health endpoints. Don't go find a framework. Just write it. It's just another couple lines of code. So Another thing that we were talking about is observability. And I went out and I've been looking for what does observability mean. I can ask 10 people, I will get 15 responses. So I don't really care about the formal definitions. I want to be able to answer these 3 questions. Why didn't I have an outage at 3 p.m. yesterday? Not because someone pulled out their server or someone didn't pay the bill. What caused the load spike this morning at 11 a.m.? And if I decrease, my service foo capacity, what does that mean for bar? Well, I don't know. Your observability, whenever we combine this all together, we should be able to see these things. And another thing is when I was talking about events earlier, log events. When I was talking about stories, you should log events. You should be able to pull together some kind of weird state machine, and you should be able to actually see how your app is running from its logs. Just think about that. So and for the more visual people, who here likes art? I personally do not like art. But I think this is a great example because I knew there would be people here who did like art. So what is this a painting of? I don't know. I mean, you like art, right? You know art. This is a painting. This is a very famous painting. Well, spoiler alert, it's this one. It's actually the color scheme from this Rembrandt painting. So whenever you have these low fidelity, crappy logs, bad metrics, this is what you are telling people. Whenever you actually put the things together and you actually define observability, this is what you get. I don't know what's going on in this picture, but it had nice colors. All right, so we thought about observability. So now we've listened to Bryan and everyone is monitoring their stacks in isolation. We said, you know what, enterprise monitoring team, it's corporate welfare. You're not doing anything for us. Just go away, collect your paychecks, leave us alone. But I have a question for you. If a tree falls in a forest, will anyone hear it? How do we ensure we have greater visibility? Well, maybe we should have an enterprise monitoring team. But what should they be doing? And this is the rub. They monitor all the SLAs. Someone needs to know how well we should be doing. Someone needs to be there to make sure that we're doing our jobs. Someone actually needs to create a standard for what monitoring is in an organization, especially a large organization. And I know there's people in this room. I'm looking out here. There's probably a few anarchists out here. And that's good. I'm actually, I'm pro you being an anarchist. But here's another thing. When it comes to large groups and large groups of disparate people, anarchy doesn't work, unfortunately. There has to be some kind of order. And really what the enterprise monitoring team is doing is actually putting the order together. And someone has to be on there for the central points for getting alerts. Because especially if I work at a bank, and I will give this example, if service XYZ goes down, but service blah, 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 way over there depends on it, and there's a lot of money going through this app, someone needs to know that there's some kind of dependencies going on through here. So you need an enterprise monitoring team to do that. And then here's something else that an enterprise monitoring team should be doing, and everyone should be running to do this. There's a lot of good talks about monitoring here today. The research for those kind of projects should happen in this team. And the reason why is if a development team needs to deliver features for business, they can't really be thinking about monitoring in a great way. So go out there and figure out what the state of the art is. And then they need to figure out what kind of monitoring tools that we need. I mean, the simple answer is I work in the enterprise, we have all of them, and every single booth there, I could say, oh wow, oh wow, oh wow, oh wow. Oh, we have 2 of those. So, yeah. So let's talk about what should we be monitoring for. I didn't make this one up. This one actually, this is use. This came from Tom Wilk. How do you say his name? Does anyone here know Tom Wilkie, or is it Tom Wilk? Well, we're talking about whenever you think about monitoring, there's a use metric. It's the use, saturation, and errors. And really, this is what you're looking for from any service. And really, if you have a resource, something that's tangible, something you can touch, you should be able to get these numbers out. And then there is Brendan Gregg, I believe, who came up with RED, which is the rate, the error rate and the durations as a distribution. So if you only have an endpoint where I can monitor this URL or this something or another, then you can actually get these kind of stats out of there. The Google SRE book has this one with the 4 golden signals: latency, traffic, errors, and saturation. I have a little bit of commentary about the Google book. It's really good, but it's really good if you're Google. I say everyone should read it. Everyone should take in all the words, and then realize that only a company like Google can run like that. But there's still lots of great lessons in there for all of us to take away. So what should we be doing with our metrics? Or at least what should this team be doing? Well, one thing they should be doing is actually taking our metrics and pulling them up and giving us enterprise-wide visibility to what's going on. Because you know what, my little foo app, how does my foo app affect the org? Well, I might not think it's important, or in a lot of cases, I think it's super important, and the central team can help aggregate that. But realize your enterprise monitoring team doesn't own your monitoring. They shouldn't be telling you how to do your monitoring. They should be telling you ways that you can get it done. And also remember, as a development team, you need to get this. You need to share your stuff. And this is a problem that I have, is that and I know I'm picking on Nagios, and only because I've had lots of years of pain with it. Even back when it was NetSaint, lots of years of pain with it. If you're running a tool, remember that your tool is not only for your knowledge. Your tool is to be shared with others. There are metrics and stats that you need to share with others. So just remember that. So, problem solved, Tom. Well, what's the most important part of this whole problem is the people, especially in an enterprise. And because it's funny, I love math, but I don't get to talk about math. So I'm going to talk about math for 5 slides. So assume your enterprise is a complete graph. Everyone knows what a complete graph is. For those who are humanities majors, the blue points are vertices. The black lines between them are edges. And this is important. So, pop quiz. How many edges are in this graph? I don't know. Good thing that people smarter than us came up with formulas. And really, all you need to do is take the number of vertices, and you do this little formula on them, and you get your number. So if you have one dev team, how many interactions do you have to have with another team? 0, 1. That's pretty obvious. That was just seeing if you were paying attention. Now, what if you have 5? Well, now you have 5 teams all talking to each other, and they all need to have a conversation. That's 10 conversations. And then 10, wow, 45. And then you get 20. You know, you're not quite a unicorn yet, but you think you're going to be a unicorn. Your CEO was on CNBC once. And then you get to 100 teams. Okay. Now you're up to almost 5,000 communications that need to go back and forth. 500. All right, now you're a tiny enterprise. Oh, now 1,000. You're at 500K. And you know what? This is not even a large enterprise. Graphs for people who like graphs. The y-axis is exponential, just in case someone wants to tap me on the shoulder when we get out of here. Like, how do we go to 1,000 to 1 million? All I wanted to do was show you that everyone can't communicate with everyone else. This is what your central team can help you do. Your central team helps define hierarchies. I'm from the South. I can't say a lot of words. Hierarchies. But I'm not country. Remember that. I'm Southern, not country. They help define boundaries and hierarchies, and which I said before can help lead to just everyone having a better time. So, I know is it almost lunchtime? All right, well, hold on. So this isn't the end game. We can actually do more, and realizing that coming to conferences like this helps me understand how much more we need to do. I actually looked over the program. There's some great talks here talking about things that are state of the art. There's things that we don't have right now. So let's talk about this. When we think about tooling, we need to think that applications must actually start supporting metrics. Metrics don't start, or your actual monitoring doesn't start at your monitoring platform looking down. Your monitoring starts with your applications teams writing metrics that says that whenever I'm getting placed out there, you can ask me how I'm doing and I will tell you. And just remember that. I love how Prometheus allows that with their client. Datadog actually has that in their client, and we just needed to have that. So I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite XKCDs. So remember, this is how it is versus how it looks. So this is what we think monitoring looks like. You know, we're here, oh no, I got this crazy problem here. I got to analyze, you know, 1 million time series per second every day. So we go in there, we're in the lab, we have a laser for some reason, and guess what? And then it's all amazing. But really, this is how it is in the real life. In the real life, we just go to work, we work hard, we try not to talk to people because that's annoying, and then we come up with something that is marginally better than what we had before. And realize that really that's how we have progressed. Think about how we got to here. No one came and said, hey, here's this shiny MacBook Pro that's already outdated. It'll make you do amazing things. No, we got a whole bunch of crappy computers before this one. And then we're going to get a whole bunch of crappy computers after this one. But we're constantly improving. And remember, constant improvement is all I'm asking for. And I want to leave you with a little bit of stank face, a little more stank face, and a little more stank face. Thank you very much.